Okay, by now you've had a fair amount of feedback from me on Module 1. I'm quite pleased in general with what I'm seeing. The journal is something that I've always encouraged people to keep after they've done one. I had, in my experience, I had to do two, which was intriguing. Um, Basically, the idea there was that we were being trained to be able to work in a wide variety of environments, educational, uh, community oriented, possibly even some other institutions. So I did one with a community mental health group. And I learned a great deal from that and have been able to use some of what I've learned. And my other one was a very good one. I was involved as liaison between a campus central office for adult learning and going out to a field center. And I've used much of what I picked up there. And that makes this topic rather interesting. What this topic is, or provides a better way to say that, what this provides is a practical application of what you're doing, which ought to lead right segue into the first one. One of the first slides in Module 2 is the one that deals with pitfalls to avoid. And what I want you to do is look at those very carefully because we are all somewhat, what's the word I want there? We're somewhat likely to find some of them very comfortable, kind of our own little niche, if you will. If that's what you have to avoid. You're to get new and broader learning experiences here. You're to develop and polish your interpersonal skills. And the intrapersonal are not bad either. Difference between your actions and then your reflection back on those actions. I'm sounding again a lot like what I asked you to do at the end of the first one, which is to reflect on any of the action reflection people that you like. I mentioned Dewey. I don't think I mentioned Steve Brookfield, formerly of Columbia, now endowed chair at a small school in Minnesota. There are a couple of other people that you could look at. If there's some you like from your previous courses, feel free to use them. Okay. One of the things I'm interested in, by now you've begun to observe a variety of leadership styles that are in place at your placement. Interesting, placement at the placement. Okay. Yeah. You're looking at a variety of leaders. You have your mentor. And you should be interacting with that individual quite reflectively throughout this entire experience. It doesn't all have to be face-to-face. A lot of it can be via texting, via longer emails, possibly even telephone. But reflect on how that individual's leadership is similar to yours, is different from yours. Some of the things that are different are the things that you would particularly like to be better at, and go with that. But I want to see that kind of spelled out, if you will, in your journal. Okay, now we come to the important one. And some of you who've known me for a while know that my other training is in political, humanistic, and interactive sociology. And I've been practicing that for over half a century. And what I want you to start to think about is, what do I know now that I've been there for a while? What do I know about the organizational culture that makes my host, the people providing me with the internship, makes them what they are? What goals do you see? What values do they reflect? What organizational objectives stand out? And of course, there always will be a dimension of those activities that the sociologists call it an of course statement. Of course, America is a democracy. Well, no, America is not a democracy. Structurally, America is a republic, and thereby a great many different things, and a lot of discussion goes on. And there will be some things that will say, well, of course we believe in this, but when you look at practice, you don't see the amount of it you think would be better given who the client at that particular time is. So look at that culture thing, compare it and contrast it with you've been there long enough now to have a more realistic view of it. Compare it and contrast it with what you thought when you first met with your mentor and discussed the institution, when you're first day or so to visiting the location. I could say campus, but remember, you already know this, but I'll repeat it. you're not necessarily tied to a specific campus. Some of you are working with larger organizations. At least one of you is at a multi-campus organization, and I've asked you to go to spend the majority of your time at the center that is your base, but also either talk with someone who has a similar role to your mentor at one of the other campuses, and you should have the opportunity, and you can ask for it certainly, to look at, if you have an idea there are other areas that you'd like to know about, have your mentor connect you with the leadership individuals. And that goes back again to looking at their leadership style. Okay. Now this is a kind of an interesting one next. One of the things that I've observed, I've been doing internships now since probably my third year in higher education, which goes back a long time. And I've done them with freshmen, I've done them in sophomores, I've done them with seniors, I've done them with you folks like master's students, and I do them with doctoral students. But one of the things that should occur, particularly since you're being assigned a project that you and the mentor agree are going to be of use to your host, how have you emerged? What are your plans to continue to emerge more fully in being a change agent at the institution? That's a very, very critical one, because I've seen several interns over the years here at Morgan where they were very significant change agents. The mentor may have wanted something to happen, but the last person who many schools pay attention to are the people who are actually there. And sometimes a fresh pair of eyes, a fresh set of ears make a big difference. And people say, well, we seem like we've heard that before, but coming from you, it sounds a little more palatable and practical for this organization. So you will be an emergent leader if you let yourself be one. Don't be abrasive, don't be too assertive, but we want you to play that role as possible. And the other thing I'm interested in you're looking at about this stage, you look at it again in Module 5, but I really want you to look at it, in this module. I want you to, by now, you've worked with your mentor enough to know that individual fairly well. I want you to go back to what you wrote in Module 1 about your leadership style and your early views of how that individual emerged as a leader in your mind, and see how has that changed. Because the critical part of this thing is that you understand that what we're doing here is broadening your base of knowledge, your base of expertise in being the leader that we've spent a good bit of time helping you become. So that's a very important one, that role model analysis. The other one that's very important, and they call it on the slide, which frankly I borrowed, they call it the X factor. And the X factor is the idiosyncrasy, uniqueness if you prefer, of how a particular institution melds and mixes the elements of the leaders, which start obviously with the chief executive, whoever that may be. Maybe a president, maybe a provost, maybe a state director, in one case at least. How does that leadership, your mentor's leadership, others that you've met, how do these leaderships come together to create an integrated type of institutional, organizational, if you prefer, culture? Because that's the thing that will really give or take an institution. That's when you go back and think about your experience, and you think about your experience at Morgan as you get the degree at the end of this course, as you move forward into another organization with which you are familiar, or perhaps you move up the ladder, how that X factor is something you can always use to make things more effective and efficient. Okay, hope you enjoyed it. We will move on now to Module 3.